on, guys? Coach John, aka the Keto Road, here again for another video. I am super excited about this one. As you can see, the board is filled. I am working on something to help this more legible. I know that it can be kind of hard to read due to the lighting and stuff. I'm working on that. But of course, I'm going to zoom in for you guys as I talk about this stuff. So there's that. Now, to get into this is super exciting. I had a bunch of people reach out to me to talk about this, which was, how can we work out on a ketogenic diet intensely? Like, how does that work? If carbs are needed for energy, then how do these mechanisms work? What about when insulin spikes and blood sugar spikes during a workout? Like, what does that mean? Is it bad to work out then? There's a lot to dig into here. So let's talk about it. So first, we have to understand that our body runs through these cycles all the time. It's just at what speeds, depending on what we need done, if we're working out, if it's high intensity, or if we're just walking or just living, right? So basically, to create ATP, our body has this thing called the Krebs cycle, okay? And this is not the whole Krebs cycle. I'm going to zoom in for you real quick. That is not the whole Krebs cycle. It is just general, the main points I want to make, because we're going to talk about certain compounds multiple times in this video. So I wanted to give you a general idea of what happens. So basically, glucose gets broken down into ATP and other compounds, and pruvic acid. Pruvic acid then gets broken down into what's called acetyl coenzyme, and then that gets put through the Krebs cycle. It produces more compounds for energy. Those meet with the original energy compounds that were made at the beginning, and then they get sent down the electron transport chain, and boom, we have energy. That is the Krebs cycle in a very, very, very short, simplistic nutshell. So basically, sugar breaks down into two forms of energy. They combine again and go down a little like electric river, so to speak, in your body, right? Okay, so that's the Krebs cycle. When you're working out, whatever, that is used. It needs oxygen to happen. All kinds of things have to be going correctly. I believe the Strong Sisters put their Instagram link below. They talked about deuterium. Ashley did a couple weeks ago. That can be affected by this and a bunch of other stuff. So this is a very, very basic but needed and essential part of how we produce energy in our bodies. Now, basically, when you start working out, okay, a couple things are going to happen. Your body is going to start using a lot more oxygen to make this happen. That's why when you're working out, you breathe harder. It's because your body's using more oxygen to try and make the Krebs cycle happen, right? Now, so what happens if you run out of oxygen? What happens when you're panting? How are people still able to keep mustering energy and mustering performance even when they can barely breathe? Well, it has something to do with something called glycolysis, okay? Glycolysis. Glycolysis, in essence, really is the ability to turn glucose into energy without oxygen, okay? Now, so basically what happens is glucose breaks down into ATP and pruvic acid. So instead of the pruvic acid being used in the Krebs cycle to make more ATP, it's actually turned into lactic acid. So basically what this means is that it's a quicker system, but it has a byproduct of lactic acid, which is why someone that is exhausted, right, when they start working out, they start to feel that crazy burn sensation and that buildup. That's lactic acid building up in the cells, right, from glycolysis taking effect. Now, this is where, as a ketogenic human, this is where things can get really, really fascinating for you, okay? So, basically, you would think, oh, so I need carbs, right? That's where, like, a lot of people talk about carb ups. They say, oh, carb ups make sense because glycolysis. I can take carbs and it's going to help me produce more energy in the form of glycolysis during my workouts, right? That's kind of like, from what I understand, that is the thought process behind carb ups in terms of regular performance, right? But as a ketogenic athlete, you have something really fascinating, okay? So gluconeogenesis, right, is a term that a lot of people get, standoffish about. They get really afraid about. It's something they're like super, super scared about. Protein is like the enemy of the ketogenic world. And the truth is that gluconeogenesis is happening right now all the time in your body if you're on keto. Without fail, your body has to restore glycogen. Your body has to create sugars. Your brain still runs on sugar. It just makes it from other things. right? So gluconeogenesis is not this terrible monster. It's part of our human processes, and the more fat adapted you are, the more efficient you become at it, and the sources that you use for it. Some sources can be protein, lactate, or fatty acids, triglycerides, stored body fat. What? You're telling me fatty acids and triglycerides can turn into sugar? They can. This is where things get really fascinating, guys. So basically, you have a triglyceride, right? So let's start with a triglyceride. So it's going to get broken down into two compounds. The fatty acids from it are going to get turned into acetyl coenzyme for what? For the Krebs cycle. So this is going to go to this for more energy. That's why someone that's fat adapted, for example, can run longer in a marathon, because you're not over oxidizing everything. You're not taking away a lot of the oxygen, right? So the Krebs cycle is a little bit more efficient, right? Okay, so then you would think we'd be at a disadvantage. However, check this out. There is a compound in triglycerides in the carboxyl group called a glycerol. Okay, a glycerol. A glycerol is basically a form of sugar in essence. And here's the fun part. It can be combined with pruvic acid through the gluconeogenesis process to be turned into glucose. For what? Glycosis. Glycosis. So check this out. So you're fat adapted, right? You're a fat adapted athlete. So you're going to start oxidizing fat for your Krebs cycle rather quickly, because you're going to your body's either going to be storing your glycogen and trying to hold on to it, or if you're doing intense exercise, it's going to run out rather quickly. So then your body's going to start using stored body fat or dietary fat as energy, right? It's going to break it up, and it's going to use that to create part of the ATP process, and then it's going to take that glycerol with the pruvic acid that is left over from the Krebs cycle. Instead of it being used to make lactic acid through glycolysis, it's going to be recycled over and over again. So you see this glycolysis, so you basically, fatty acids get oxidized, right? Get turned into energy for the Krebs cycle. The glycerol goes with the pruvic acid and gets turned into glucose. The glucose gets broken down into pruvic acid and ATP, and then ATP gets recycled with the glycerol to make more glucose. You see what I'm saying? That's why fat-adapted athletes are much more efficient at flushing out lactic acid. That's why, like, if you hear Robert Sykes talk about working out, he's going to talk about how, you know, the difference between when he was keto and when he was carb-based is when he was carb-based, he would feel that burn, and that's what would make him stop. But as a ketogenic athlete, really, you just get to a point where you can't move it anymore. Like, it's complete dead muscle groups. Complete. And that's because you get past that point where some people would quit because of the lactic acid buildup. You really get to a point of no failure, in my opinion. But, like, that's the fascinating part, right? So, literally, you're at an advantage because you're still going to produce the sugar you need, right? And, yeah, it's not going to happen as fast as ingesting carbs that make glycolysis, but you're going to be able to go longer because you don't have as much lactic acid buildup. So, for me, I don't see the advantage of carb ups. I think that our body handles glycolysis just fine. And I think that through the gluconeogenesis process and fatty oxidation for the Krebs cycle, our bodies are just fine. And it's an amazing thing. So basically, in simplistic terms, to wrap this all up before we go on to the next subject, to really like make this simple for you, right? Your body takes sugar and turns it into energy, or it takes fatty acids and turns it into energy, okay? When you're keto adapted, you use fat, you turn it into energy, and then when that happens, some of it gets turned into sugar, and that gets paired with what's called pruvic acid to make more energy, and it makes it to where you don't have as much lactic acid. So you make energy just like someone on carbs, but yet you do it in a more efficient way. There's less byproduct of carbon dioxide. You don't use as much oxygen, and you don't get as much lactic acid buildup. So literally, like, you're a winner all the way around. So I really think being fat adapted and running on dietary fat is a lot more efficient, but it takes time. It takes time for your body to get really efficient at this. So trust the process, trust your body, you will adapt. Now, the real interesting conversation. I had this conversation with a client the other day. They were worried about insulin spiking, blood sugar rising at a workout, and if that was detrimental or there was no point. So let's go back to this. Like I said, when you oxidize fat, your body's going to use that glycerol, especially if you're in a place where you don't have a lot of oxygen and it needs to do glycolysis. It's going to use that glycerol molecule with the pruvic acid to create glucose for you to use as energy. That's going to circulate your blood. What does that mean? That means that during intense exercise, put it simply, your blood sugar is going to rise due to fat oxidation and the need for quick fuel. Your blood sugar is going to rise when you work out intensely. It is very normal. And it's completely healthy, and it's part of one of your body's functions. And in fact, I would say you actually can oxidize more fat doing that because your body needs more fatty acids broken down to create more glycerol, to create more glucose. So it actually becomes, the more efficient you get at it, it's actually better, and you'll burn more body fat overall. More fatty acids will be oxidized. And so, like, that's a fascinating thing. But you need to know that it's okay. Like, if you see your blood sugar rise after a workout and your ketones drop, that's fine. That means you had a really intense workout and your blood sugar just rose. Insulin will come out like it's supposed to. Insulin is not the enemy. Insulin resistance is the enemy. Insulin is an anabolic hormone, and it's going to be triggered when you work out, regardless of whether you're keto or not. It's understanding what causes it and if it's healthy or not. And insulin is a normal thing. It's part of our body. There's a reason it's there. It's there to keep our blood sugar balanced. And so if you have blood sugar rise, insulin will be released. It will come back down. You'll be balanced. And in fact, because you're giving it exercise and you're not overworking it, it actually becomes more efficient. And so you'll see, like, over time, your blood sugar will get even more stable and it will come down faster after working out. So blood sugar raising after a workout is completely normal, keto or not keto. And the truth of the matter is that if you're fat adapted, you produce energy, both sugar and fatty acids, just fine. All right, guys, I hope that made sense. Please put comments in the comment section below. I know that was literally a lot to cover. So let me know if nothing made sense. Let me know if everything made sense. Let me know what you want me to talk about in these videos, what you want me to go more in depth on. Put it in the comment section below. I love you guys. Have a great day. Peace out.